That's the good stuff.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Goodwill Podcasting with Connor, Dan, and Stone, a movie podcast that today is talking about one of the most anticipated movies of the entire year, the only Marvel movie to come out this year. Big news story on that when it first dropped, that it's only going to be Deadpool and Wolverine this year. And at the end of the day, I think this will be the highest grossing movie of 2024. Of course, it's starring Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman, and other people that we will discuss. This will be an open spoiler discussion today. Lots to talk about, but we're not doing it alone. We're super excited to have Vetsmovies on here with us today. I was super pumped when we had Deadpool on our calendar, and you were the very first person I thought of, and I really wanted to have you on. It's a privilege, Joel, to have you here. Please tell people where to find you and what you do.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. So I am obviously Vetsmovies on every single platform. YouTube just hit 50K the other day, so that's moving up in the world there. TikTok, Letterboxd, serialized, every app at the same at Vetsmovies. A lot of rankings, lots of big franchise stuff, pretty much every new release. That's what I do, and I'm kind of like the superhero guy in a way. I feel like kind of drifted away from that now that there hasn't been as much content, but definitely that's my core. Started with superheroes and here to talk about more superheroes.
I feel like you're a little bit different though, because I feel like usually when it comes to people in that genre, when they talk about that genre, they're a little like over positive a lot of times. Deadpool Wolverine, best movie of the entire year, love it, best Marvel movie ever. But every single video I see of you, more than not, you like have some really solid critiques about the film, and I really respect you for that, because I feel like you do sometimes talk about that stuff a lot, and you have probably this core fan base that follows you, but they also follow you not only for the content that you're talking about, but also because you're real with it, like real things.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I have that like fanboy side in me. Like I watch a movie like Deadpool and Wolverine and I see it's far from a perfect movie, but I just have a blast with every X-Men movie, even the ones that I really like. You can look at like X-Men Origins, Wolverine. I still have fun with a lot of those movies, even when they're pretty bad. I just love, this characters and stuff, but I also like to bring in the side of like, you can love and enjoy something and also look at it and say, this isn't the greatest thing that's ever existed. And I think a lot of people do kind of appreciate that look, to be like, yeah, you can really love even your favorite movies of all time. There's something that's just like, you can just point out, and it's not, you don't have to be like the most negative in the world or the most positive, which is a lot of stuff online. It's like every movie is the greatest thing to ever exist or the worst movie to ever exist. And I've definitely had my fair share of clickbait things like Despicable Me 4. I started off and I was like, this is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. But that was a true statement. It was. So I try to stay in that neutral ground of not getting swayed with the hype of, over positivity or negativity.
I think that's so important. And I feel like we see that over and over again. Like I feel like it happened with Long Legs. There's so much hype build up, somewhat exaggerated, and then the anti-hype comes and like all the more negative people or people that just want to contradict. And then you watch the movie and like it is good, but it is really flawed. And it's like, I feel like ideally we should just be presenting everything, and it doesn't have to be entrenching yourself in one side or the other to like drown out the other side. It's just like it gets to be so much sometimes, and I feel like we're gonna see the same thing with Deadpool and Wolverine. Like I don't love it, but I also don't. I'm not like this is the worst thing ever. It's just like I have a lot of problems with it. Some of it made me smile. I liked some of it. Like it's okay to be in the middle, but that often doesn't get clicks. It doesn't get views. Like people don't want nuanced opinions. They want just like an emotional reaction, which I get, and it's the fucking internet. Like I get it, but sometimes it's frustrating. But I feel like we've seen that with multiple movies this year.
My brother makes fun of me because he's not really on TikTok a whole lot, but I feel like he only has it just because I have it. He's like, Stone, every time I click on one of your videos, you're just like screaming in my face. I was like, that's what gets people's attention.
Yeah, it's kind of odd that like I feel like when I started my account, if I go look at videos, like I started in like January last year, 2023, and if I go and watch those now, like I'm a monotone person in general, but those videos, I have like one that was like a week in, it somehow got 1 million views. I am like I sound dead inside when I'm talking in this video. I have no idea how people sat through it and watch. I'm like, this is like the most low energy. I am just like talking at 1 word per minute. I have no idea how I did it at the beginning.
Honestly, I feel like Dan gets that a lot too.
Yeah, I'm still that way now. I just like, I don't know. I feel the same way. If you go back and look at when you started, it's like my stuff's the same way. I'm also a very like I guess monotone person, but um, I feel like I can only turn that on so much. But this is kind of how I am. Um, but you know, some people like that, some people don't. It's all right. Not everyone's gonna follow everyone.
Hey,
It
look
is
at you
what it
now,
is.
man. We got what, almost 300K followers, I think, on TikTok, correct?
Yeah, I think
Dan,
to like 60 or something. I should probably know that, but I don't.
I mean, you and Dan.
Um,
Dan's getting a lot of
Honestly, followers don't
followers.
even matter.
People like monotone.
Yeah, I've been noticing every week or two, I'll see a video that's just like 100K here, 100K there for you, and it's just like random topics too that I love, like Caitlin Clark videos, and I'm just like, oh wow, this has like 500,000 views.
Yeah, I get bored sometimes, like talking about because like I feel like there's only so much stuff for us to talk about, and it is really like saturated with the same topics. And um, I would go crazy if I just talked about the same stuff. I'm like, I will hit the stuff I'm supposed to talk about, but like, I'll make a video that'll get 1,000 views, but I'll be talking about like some shit I think is interesting. If people like it, that's cool. If not, and some of those will do well, but like, I just need to mix it up. Otherwise, I feel like I'd go crazy. And I feel like you guys are the same way. I feel like you don't just talk about like the same shit all the time, which is good.
Yeah, I like that discussion that we were having about nuance, though, especially when it comes to Deadpool and Wolverine, because I think probably with the three of us, what's happening is I think Dan's probably on the bottom with how much he enjoyed it, and then I'm in the middle, and then I saw your review. I didn't want to click on it, but I was like, I got to know his thoughts, so I clicked on your video. So I think that's going to be a really interesting discussion. But we're not only talking about that movie, we're also going to be talking about Logan, which we all now know plays a really big part in Deadpool and Wolverine. And I'm really curious. I don't think this is going to be a lot of nuance. I think we probably all really enjoy this movie. And I'm curious with you, Vets, because you said you're the superhero guy, right? So I'm curious if you have like a superhero movie ranking and where exactly Logan is on that.
I definitely have like a list, but I kind of don't like to stick just to like when the things like comes to all time things like that, like all time movies, all time superhero. I feel like lists kind of just are irrelevant because it's like, well, I love all these things, but it would definitely probably be in my top 10 easily. I think it's a masterpiece of a movie that should obviously it is beloved between like our community and the people that are loving X-Men and stuff, but I feel like it needs to reach that next level of like a Dark Knight where it's just widely regarded as one of the best movies of all time that everybody talks about, and everybody that watches it loves it. But I feel like it hasn't reached that widespread status. But for me, it's definitely top 10, maybe top 5, honestly, if I really thought about it.
Connor, I have to ask because I know you sometimes see my letterbox reviews. Did you see? I watched it. I rewatched Logan today. Did you see what my letterbox review was? No. Okay, so it was. I cried. I've never cried in a film before. I have got teary eyed, but as I was watching Daphne Keene say "Daddy," I felt it come down. And I don't know. I even said this. I watched this movie before. That didn't happen the first time. So I think the only plausible reason why that happened to me was that I just watched Deadpool and Wolverine. Because there is emotional beats to that film, but when you watch Logan, it just doesn't compare. It really doesn't. I think this was. I mean, there's a lot of Oscar buzz around this movie when it came out. Has James Mangold attached to it as the director? But do you guys know? Oh, sorry. Do you guys know what was the only category it was nominated for when it came to the Oscars?
I do not.
Don't remember.
So it was only nominated for adapted screenplay.
Okay, I mean it's a good category to be nominated in, honestly.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting for a superhero film, and it's very fitting for this film as well. I thought Hugh Jackman, and honestly, Daphne Keene, they bounce off so well with each other. Like what I got from this was basically she is basically a mini adult. So it really pairs along well with Logan. Like they butt heads really well together because they're basically the same person, even though she's 12, 13 in this.
Yeah, not to like jump into like towards the end of the movie, but there's that one scene where like she drives the car when he's just so done and defeated.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a funny scene, but at the same time, it just kind of shows you that like, yeah, here's this little girl that has just been like taken away from any sort of childhood, anything, and thrown into this situation where like now she's caring for Logan, who's like the old beat up man at this stage.
Yeah, and I think part of what makes Wolverine great is he's just this lone wolf character. Like he's constantly on his own. He's constantly in the comics going through awful things, losing people. I think he's kind of someone who feels like as he gets closer to people, bad things happen. That's kind of a recurring theme. So he's always just kind of isolated. And I think with Daphne Keene, he sees another person who has had that same experience, and they understand and they kind of recognize that in each other. And there definitely is that period of like butting heads and pushback because like he can't just tell her what to do. He can't push her around. Like she stands up for herself. But they develop like that mutual respect, and then both kind of like peel away each other's shell, and it just becomes something like really beautiful. This is my favorite superhero movie. I made a whole video talking about this before. I don't want to like talk for 10 minutes right now, but this is my favorite superhero movie of all time, and for a lot of reasons. How do you feel, Connor?
Something that really stood out. Oh, got it, Connor? What's up?
Yeah, sorry. This is my second time watching Logan, and genuinely, I think it's the second best comic book movie ever made, right behind Into the Spider-Verse. But I think where this movie really stands out for me is in two different parts. Is like, one, this movie doesn't always feel like you're watching a superhero movie. It feels very real and grounded for me. But my favorite scene in the whole movie is when Logan's getting very like upset about the comic books. And he's like, it's not all heroism and this, that, and the other. Like you see, like, and he shows that there's actual pain and suffering that comes along with this life.
Yeah, I think something that's interesting about, and I liked something I did like about Deadpool and Wolverine was when you go back and you look at what Fox did with the X-Men. I think the X-Men are hands down the best thing Marvel has to offer. I know everyone doesn't feel that way, but I do. I think it's a conglomeration of their best characters, their best writing, thematically, their strongest stuff. And I think with the Fox movies, a lot of times they seemed afraid to really go for it, or afraid to like be themselves or be superhero movies. Like they always had to be kind of like buttoned up, and like they were just wearing like the fucking black jumpsuits, and like just kind of like, I think they say in Deadpool, like embarrassed to be superhero movies. And like, I think there's an element of that to Nolan's Batman. It's like embarrassed to be a Batman movie. And like, that's a different conversation. But like, I just think sometimes it's fun to just let it rip and just be a comic book movie. And this is still obviously very serious. It's a great standalone genre movie, regardless of just being a superhero movie. But, it also is heavily pulling from Old Man Logan, although it is very different, but it does feel like a comic book story. And it's doing such interesting things with these characters that I just feel like it was more bought into being a movie really about these characters and not just like a generic action movie that was embarrassed of itself. So I like that aspect of it.
Well, kind of like you were just saying there at the end, I feel like that's why I like this so much, is because it's really just a personal story that at the end of the day, the world isn't ending, the city isn't, flooding. It's not all being taken over by some super evil, like, comic book dictator that's just like, I don't know, you don't have the world ending stakes. And when you can just go in and see these couple characters that are just caring about each other, it just feels like you're watching real people instead of like, I don't know, everything with every superhero movie, even the Nolan Batman ones, is always like all of Gotham is at stake, or every Avengers movie, obviously, like that, you understand it. But now it feels like every movie has Avengers level stakes, where it's like the entire multiverse, the entire universe, it's all going to collapse if we fail. So it's nice to just see, oh, this is just Logan trying to help these kids and Laura in particular, and just that more personal, small scale story.
I would say the villain in this movie is like death. Like it's death for Logan. That's what's like finally going to catch up and get him. So the goal of the movie is just to try to get these kids to safety before that kills them. Because really, in his whole life, right, he's been indestructible. So it doesn't really matter, with Boyd Holbrook's character coming to get him, or the second Hugh Jackman, that is what will eventually defeat him. So that is what's really driving the entire film as well. The villain, in a sense, is driving the movie, which is super interesting. And just coming from a medical background, something that stood out to me on this rewatch was the emphasis on care and the progression of it throughout the film, because you have the nurse who takes care of Laura. And then you have Logan, who in a sense is a nurse for Charles. taking care of him. And then Logan eventually takes care of Laura when Charles is no longer in the picture. And then at the end, Laura takes care of Logan. I thought that was very interesting how there's constantly people who are in peril, and the hero of the story, in a sense, is changing throughout the film. And I can't get over Daphne Keene's performance in this. I really can't. I will say there is a lot of jokes in Deadpool and Wolverine. Some work, some don't work, but nothing made me laugh harder than I did during this movie. When she's quiet, there's not a lot of jokes in this movie. There really aren't. It's a very serious film. But when she's quiet the entire time, and then he goes, "Oh, you can talk," and then she doesn't she just keeps rattling off shit. And he's like, "Shut the fuck up." I thought that was such a built-up joke, kind of, and it was just so funny for the character to Logan to be so mad right away that she can talk, and he didn't know that, but right away he changes his opinion on it, and he's like, "Just shut the fuck up. I don't want you to talk at all." I thought that was so good. I had a question for y'all. Because you guys, I feel like, are more knowledgeable about comic book movies than I am. I feel like a lot of times when it comes to X-Men movies, even Deadpool and Wolverine, it's like, oh, you got this mutant, you got that mutant. Does Caliban in all the X-Men movies ever appear in another one, or is he just in this movie?
I don't believe he's in any other movie ever.
He's just in this one.
Okay. That was very interesting. I thought Stephen Merchant did a really good job as well. I think he's usually a comedic actor. I don't see him in a whole lot of serious stuff. I don't see him in a lot of stuff, but usually it's in comedies. So I thought he did a perfect job.
Yeah, I really like him in Jojo Rabbit too. But I thought he was incredible. I like, you were kind of talking about the care thing. I love that scene at the beginning of where it's just like Logan and Caliban, and they're just like kind of fighting over like, oh, your turn to go in and give him his pills and stuff, and just that kind of relationship. It's like, I don't know, those moments I feel like it just really let you just see into the like personal life of these characters that are just so beaten down, but it's just something that anybody watching can probably relate to or will relate to at some point. And just, I feel so bad for Caliban in this movie. I feel like he deserves so much better, and he's just, ever since like the very first time you see him on screen, he's just going through just as rough stuff as Logan. Honestly, he's just not the main focus.
Yeah. I wanted to say, Stone, you were talking about death kind of being the enemy. I think what's interesting here, I'm pretty sure in the comics, and I'm assuming in the movie, what's happening to Wolverine isn't that he's getting old. He's poisoning himself with the whiskey he's drinking. The cure for mutant genes was put into like corn. So the whiskey he's drinking is literally taking away his regenerative healing and his powers, like the more he drinks. So like his alcoholism is actually what's making him human and making him vulnerable, which is really interesting. No one really talks about that, but
because he doesn't know that. He thinks the adamantium's killing him.
Yeah, that's not it. It's his drinking, which is kind of poetic and interesting. But
Dan, did they cover that in a comic book movie or one of the other movies, and I just missed it?
No, that's just like that's established in the comics, and
okay,
like yeah.
Now that's a good deep cut. I don't need to see a cameo of a character. I need to know that. What do you say? Corn is the cure to mutant genes.
Yeah, they were putting it into like the corn supply. But yeah, I mean, I feel like there's so many like small performances in this movie that like no one is phoning it in. Every single individual character has so much character to them. And I feel like there's just really good, like you were talking about, Joel, like conflict established between each sets of character. And to me, like small conflicts like that is what kind of gets you from scene to scene and pushes a story forward and makes it like engaging. And then being able to see that resolved or not resolved, I think is often what provides like more emotional moments, which it does here. But yeah, I don't know if anyone can watch this movie and not get emotional on one level or another. And it's like there's a lot of different emotional angles it hits you from. I think it's not just like one. So I like that.
Yeah, Patrick Stewart's rough too. they make Patrick Stewart look like shit in this. They do and Logan. Like the makeup department is fantastic.
He lost like 25 pounds to do this. He did that to himself. Like he really fucking went for it. And you know, for an older guy, that's really tough on the body. It's tough on the body at any age, but respect to him for doing that because he looks near death. I mean, it's crazy.
Go ahead.
I feel like the scene that like you're just saying you can't watch this and not have some like emotional reaction. I forget their names, but when they go to the families and have dinner And like it's not even like a funny moment, but it's just kind of like levity of them just sitting at this table talking about like, oh, we're running the school and everything. And it's just like a moment to breathe in the middle of this movie. And you're like, okay, this is a light, kind of heartwarming moment. And then it's just followed by X-24, obviously, rolling in, heartbreaking, kills Charles. He's thinking it's Logan. It's just like the gut punch from that moment of just sincerity. It's like their last good moment that they all have.
It's so good. It's such a good scene. Like from because that is the lightest moment in the movie, that dinner. It's just like a bit of humanity in this like awful world. And like just the thought of him thinking that Logan is just killing like in the middle of the night, it's like so devastating. It's really well done.
So I wanted to ask you guys, I think when people have critiques when it comes to this film, the big critique maybe is the duo Logan, like two Logans, like that is the big bad guy of this movie. Like, what do you guys think about that addition to the story? Is that also from the comics? Probably.
Yeah, I think it works because I think it shows you what Wolverine is at his worst. Like he's just a fucking animal. Like he's just a weapon. Like he's like that's how he was viewed for so much of his life, is just a weapon to be used. And I feel like seeing him at his strongest, being used by the worst people, just like it makes you appreciate like who Logan is even more, even through all the awful shit he's been through. I think it worked, but I could understand people not liking it.
So there's two little tidbits, like around two plot points. I guess I don't know what to call them, but they're very small things that I really enjoyed because I believe they're introduced at the beginning of the film, and then the payoffs for both items, I'll call them items, is very rewarding. One is this constant talk between Charles and Logan about getting a boat. And I think that's just basically the last words that Charles speaks to Logan is like the Sunseeker. And I thought that was really effective. And that was like the perfect last line for them and their dynamic with each other in this narrative. But then also the fact that I think right at the beginning of the film, we also see the bullet that Logan has and the adamantium bullet. And that's constantly carried out throughout the entire film. And you don't really know, I guess it's a little bit predictable what comes of it, but maybe not. Maybe you do think that Logan, in a way, is going to use it on himself in some way, but then X-24 comes in and that's ultimately the end of it. But I thought both of those were trickled in perfectly. They always put it in the script to remind you of them, and then when the payoffs come, it's just perfect.
Well, there's a scene with the bullet that him and Logan and Laura, and where she's pretty much like she has the bullet, and it's like he's like, yeah, I was gonna kill myself with this thing. Just seeing him like, I don't know, he's just so disconnected. I feel like he's been wanting to die this entire time, and like you said, death's kind of the villain of the movie, but at the same time, it's him like fighting towards his own death, but not in the way that he's planning the entire time. I just kind of love that I don't know, he was just so defeated and ready to do this, but he never did, and he kind of found this reason in Laura. Like she's kind of what stopped the bullet in the movie for Logan. It feels like, if this story, if it wasn't a movie and it's just old man Logan and Laura never shows up, he probably doesn't make it past 2 days from when we see him first.
Yeah, because you pick up with him at the bottom of the barrel, like completely, right? Like in every facet of his life, and like that is one difference in old man Logan in the cop. Like he's a pacifist, like that's what defines him. He's over all the violence, and this movie opens up with him just fucking demolishing those guys that try to like jump him or steal his car or tire or whatever. Like that scene is so good, and I love the way it's executed because it tells you like he's not as sharp as he was, no pun intended, like, and he's weakened and he's able to be hurt. Like he's not just, it's not clean, like he still gets the job done, but I think it's such a gritty, really, really good fight, and a great opening for the movie.
Did they explain in the movie, or did I miss it, as to why, like, once they kind of got into Canada, that they were going to be safe? Because that's one thing that didn't make sense to me, because they had already been chased across one border.
Maybe they just abide by country laws, Like, oh shit, we didn't bring our passports.
They chased them from Mexico into the U.S.
I don't know. That was bullshit. I don't know.
I think they were going to a particular place, like a particular like place of shelter from mutants or something that was already established. I'm fairly sure that was mentioned, but I don't fully remember.
I was
That
gonna say, if
sounds
I
right.
missed it, like, tell me.
I feel like it's kind of like just focus on Logan dying and forget about that moment. And they probably do cover it, but
Yeah.
it's like, don't really focus on any of those details. Just focus on this stuff here and forget
That's
about
like
all
a
that.
big thing, like throughout all of it. And then like even at the end when they're like chasing all the kids through the woods, he's like, "You can't let them cross the border." Like, I was like, "Why? You already chased them one border."
So they called it Eden, right? Like that's where they were trying to go. I think the movie doesn't like spoon feed to you whether or not it's real, but it's more so about like it's just a hopeful idea for the kids. Like it's something in their mind where they're like, okay, we can get here and be safe. And it's like, if you're Logan and you're in this world, like, why not take the chance? Like, even if it's not real, like, it's just keeping them going. And I feel like this movie is very much about just like finding things to keep you going. And that's like Joel just talked about. That's what Laura is to Logan. So like, why not give them hope and like, give them a reason to keep going? So I think it's left a little bit up in the air whether or not it's a real safe place or not.
I was just gonna say, because isn't like the stereotype that people in Canada are super friendly, so maybe they just know that they won't belong there, like the people who are chasing them. They can't get to Canada. They don't allow mean guys like us up there.
Yeah. I'll say one criticism of the movie. I think the one scene that kind of pulls me out is when Pierce is the villain, right? That's Boyd Holbrook's character. I think his name is Pierce. When
That's right.
he's knocked out and he sends Caliban to just go like dump him in like just kill him. Just fuck that guy up. Like there's no way they would leave him alive. And it's the only thing that allows the plot to continue. And then he just like overpowers Caliban. I'm just like this feels a little stupid to me. I don't know what you guys think about that.
You're saying Caliban should have killed Pierce?
No, Logan would have killed him, I think. Like, why would they not?
Oh, got you. Okay.
He just sends it to like dump him out in the desert, and he's like knocked unconscious. I just thought that was a dumb scene. I don't know. Maybe just me.
Yeah. Maybe it is. Well, only thing I can think of is that possibly. Well, that isn't because it happened anyways. I was because maybe Logan just trying to stay out of like drama and violence and stuff like that. Maybe he's trying to change, right? He keeps on
They had
hating
already
himself.
killed so many people, though. Like,
He's trying to say. He said. I mean, there's that whole scene where he's like, I think Laura's trying to justify like she's killed bad people, and Logan's like, it doesn't matter. Like, no matter if it's good or bad people, it's still killing people. So that's a big stretch because you're talking about the beginning of the movie and I'm talking about the end of the movie, but I'm stretching here.
yeah, no, that's fair.
I was gonna say, and even you said he's trying to in the comics, he wants to be like kind of more of a pacifist. So maybe that.
Yeah, but that's not this Logan. This Logan
Yeah, I
just
know, but like,
cutting dudes' arms off to start the movie. Like,
Well, they shot his car.
and him.
Yeah, they told him not to shoot his car.
I do just love the idea of him just being like this limo driver kind of thing, just like going around. Like it's just such a cool, like not really cold open, but just opening for the movie of him just like driving around doing this random job to get the little bit of money he can.
Like you said, Connor, I think like I really like that this is just so realistic. Like it's really, really like they just go to Vegas, I believe. That's where the casino is and all that happens. And like the only time that you see, there's not a lot of mutants in this too. And the only time you see something that's futuristic, I think this is supposed to take place in 2029, I believe, is those semi trucks that drive themselves, and that's about it. So it kind of doesn't feel like a superhero movie, even though it is one. And I think that's super cool because not everybody can go watch Deadpool and Wolverine. They really can't. They won't understand a whole lot. But I really think that this is more a drama than a superhero film. And that might irritate some people. But I think it'll appease to both people who are superhero fans and who aren't, which is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, my dad, like, he's maybe seen like 3 superhero movies of what I'll call the modern era. I feel like I could sit him down and watch Logan with him, and he would find enjoyment out of it.
Same.
Yeah, because it's a well-written, compelling story that like has just, I think, like wide generational appeal. Like, and what I love the most about it that I've talked about before is just, I think no matter where you are in life, like you can see it from a different angle. Like for me personally, like I grew up like watching like the X-Men cartoons in the 90s, and like Wolverine's always been like one of my favorite characters, and same with Professor X, but I think seeing him in this state where he is vulnerable, he is not perfect, he's not indestructible, when you always viewed him as this like literally the toughest dude imaginable, and seeing him in this state like down the road, I think a lot of us can relate that to our parents. Like you start realizing like about your parents' mortality, maybe you've seen them get sick, whatever. And the same thing with Professor X. Like he's always this just like very in control, very buttoned up, like caring, thoughtful dude. And here he's kind of just like he's losing it. Like he has dementia basically. He can't control his powers. He's hurting people. And I think and I think if you've seen a grandparent get older, like, and they're dealing with the same issues, like, you know, a lot of times they can say hurtful things, they can lash out, they lose control too, and it's very much like it's just real. And then also just, you know, the father-daughter aspect is obvious, but I just think in terms of like seeing our heroes like age and not be perfect and get sick and all that is just very relatable, and I think that's what makes this like timeless.
I also think that like the detail that, like you said, Charles, he like obviously loves all the X-Men. That's his entire life, what he dedicated to, and that detail that like him losing control is the reason that so many of the X-Men are dead is because of his like, I don't even know what to call them, like the seizures that just like you see in the hotel. Like that's just such a heartbreaking detail that the guy that his entire life is about all the X-Men, giving them all a home, and then at the end of the day, it's like he lost control, and that's the reason there's pretty much no X-Men anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely devastating.
One thing that stands out to me about this movie, I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but I don't remember a lot of trailers. I really don't. They just come and go and they're whatever. I'll never forget the first time I clicked on that trailer when Johnny Cash is hurt was playing over this. That was one of the fucking coolest. That was one of the coolest trailers I've ever seen, and it was perfect. And I've honestly gone back and just watched it, and the way it's cut, the way it's edited with the song, the way the song perfectly matches the themes of the film. It's just nothing better, really.
Yeah, I think we talk about that. So like, I mean, we've all talked about it, but just creating trailers that just give you atmosphere and a taste of a performance. That's it. Like just atmosphere and that, you know, just show the characters and that get out. Like those tend to stick with people and work and get you actually excited. Like, even with Deadpool and Wolverine, like I feel like you watch the fucking trailers, you just see the progression of the movie. It's like they're literally taking snippets of the fucking story and just pasting them together. And I hate it. Like I really, really don't like it. And I keep waiting for the pendulum to like swing back to trailers getting better, but and occasionally there are good ones. Like I think, you know, Longlegs did a decent job with it, for better or for worse, but a lot of them are just stuck in doing the same thing over and over. I don't like it.
I think the Omnibus has been pretty good. They don't show a whole lot of the Xenomorph, which I kind of appreciate. It's like always right at the end. Every single trailer is just like, boom, just a Xenomorph right at the end. But I feel like we're going to see hopefully a whole lot more of them in the movie. But
I don't even watch like trailers. Like in the last like 5 months, I probably haven't watched any trailers. Like the last one I really watched was the Deadpool and Wolverine one. And even watching this movie, there was like 5 to 10 lines that I was like, I probably would have laughed at this if I didn't see it in the trailer and knew this exact joke was coming at this exact moment. And I'm like, I'm never going to watch these trailers again, because that was only the first one. And then it's even worse with the trailers 2 and 3. And I don't even watch those. And then I open up, you know, any app, Twitter, and it's like, oh, a discussing film. The news account is posting the cameos revealed in the trailer. I'm like, okay, great. I didn't even want to see that. I don't want to see anything going into it. I just either need a premise or honestly nothing. I know I'm going to see these anyways. Just let me go in blind. I honestly think they should do like TikTok edits. I feel like they need to take that style. It's like one scene or just a bunch of clips with a cool song in the background, 30 seconds long. That will get me to watch something, because it gives me no details. I'm like, oh, this looks cool. There's one cool quote, I'm in. I don't need a 3-minute trailer telling me everything.
I was gonna say, Joel, I avoid trailers like the plague. So I think that might be why I believe out of the four of us here today, I've rated Deadpool and Wolverine the highest.
I gave it a
Because
4. I don't know what you gave it
okay,
on
you got
Letterboxd.
and I got a 3.5. But because I didn't know any of the or like any of the jokes in the trailers, and I know the spoiler that was ruined obviously in that last trailer, but I didn't. It wasn't spoiled for me because I hadn't seen the trailer.
They actually came out with why they did that. Kevin Feige said there's two reasons
So
why.
so stupid, man. I'm sorry. It's so
I guess
stupid.
we're transitioning into kind of Deadpool and Wolverine. Logan's great. Deadpool and Wolverine. Why Daphne Keane was in the trailer? One is because she wanted to attend the red carpet, so that's why. And then also they wanted to show an emotional core of the movie before the release. So I don't know. That's why people a lot of times go to a Deadpool movie for the emotional core. I think the trailers got the vibes pretty set pretty well when it comes to Deadpool. This is very much rated R. A lot of people were afraid that they were going to Disneyfy it, but I have an issue with how much it's rated R in a way because I had people talking to me and being like, "Oh, they have gore and they have swearing." Yes, but I think that was part of the joke was that this is a Disney Marvel film and that there is so much swearing because I feel like most of all the jokes here really come from when it comes to the duo, it comes from Ryan Reynolds. I feel like when it comes to Hugh Jackman, all it is fuck off. Like that's all that's all he says all the time. He's like, shut the fuck up. Like that's his like one line. But Connor, what did you think of Deadpool and Wolverine?
After I sat and thought with it for about 3 hours after I left the theater, I still really enjoy it because it is one giant fan service. Now, is the plot the most groundbreaking plot you're ever going to watch? Far from it. um, Hugh Jackman acted his ass off in this, though. He did everything he could for this movie. I loved every single cameo. Henry Cavill might be my favorite, if I'm being honest.
I would have preferred Daniel Radcliffe, to be honest. I mean, I guess it fits the superhero vibe because he's Superman or whatever. But I thought Daniel Radcliffe would have been cooler. But that's
Well, that
just
was
my
probably one of the. They said they put out fake leaks. That was probably one of them that they put out there because they said they were like trying to see who was leaking the stuff from the studio. I'm sure that was there because that was a huge rumor and like blurb a couple months ago. It's like, oh, Daniel Radcliffe as Wolverine. I'm sure that's like that was their thing to catch people. Like, oh, you knew this information that wasn't even real and you let it out there. Now you're fired into oblivion.
Well, something that's crazy is that I was trying to look it up. I think they took it down, but if you just like look up, search this online, it's true. Is that Deadline came out with an article stating that Patrick Stewart was going to be in this as Charles Xavier. He's not. He's not in the movie, and you can know. I looked on Deadline's website to try to find that article. I can't find it anymore. But if you search Deadline and search Patrick Stewart, Deadpool, and Wolverine, a lot of people talk about that article, but you can no longer find it. Don't know what happened there. There was who is the guy that owns the soccer team with Ryan Reynolds? Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
It's Rob McElhenney.
Supposedly, I think he is in the trailer, but it came out today that they cut him from the film, which is really interesting because I know him and Ryan are obviously buddies.
I don't think he was in the trailer or the one I watched at least, but I'm pretty sure they like came out and said, or he came out and said on maybe his like Sunny podcast, he was like, "Oh, I'm going to be in it," and now I guess he was cut. But just quickly on the Charles thing, I know when Regal put out like a teaser for their popcorn bucket, it was like his chair. So I think a lot of people jumped on that from like, oh, Regal leaked it by announcing their popcorn bucket of Charles's chair that he's going to be in it, and they just jumped to that conclusion. But then obviously we see it, the popcorn bucket's actually like baby Deadpool in that chair, and in the movie Cassandra Nova is with like a similar chair, so it was probably just one of those. But I think outlets just kind of jumped to that conclusion. They're like, oh, Regal shouldn't have let this out earlier, and now he's going to be in this, but he was not.
Speaking of outlets, dude, they don't give a fuck about spoilers, not at all. I think it was Hollywood Reporter maybe, but they just said basically everyone in a Twitter post. They just basically listed everyone, and there was no mention of the word spoiler anywhere. They're just like, we don't give a shit. Here you go. And I saw so many people be like, what are we doing here? Like, what is the point?
I mean, you know the point, right? It's just
Yeah, it's
engagement.
click to get people talking like me right now.
Yeah, it's just it sucks. I wanted to ask you guys your thoughts. There was like a conversation going on about if something is in one of the fucking 17 trailers they put out, is it a spoiler? Like, this to me is one of the dumbest conversations I've ever heard in my life. Like, something is a spoiler if someone doesn't have to know about it. It negatively impacts their viewing experience, and you make them aware of it for no reason. Like, without, and it's unnecessary. Like, people were like, "Oh, well, you know, Laura being in the movie isn't a spoiler because it's in the trailer." Like, I was scrolling on TikTok and someone I followed just had her fucking face on the screen and he was there like, oh my God, she's in the movie. I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, that is a spoiler. And like, I think if you think it's not, like, that's just a very self-centered, selfish point of view, on to be completely honest. Like, I instantly unfollowed the person. I'm just like, I don't understand what you're thinking. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I find it spoilers are so insane with like TikTok with everything so instant. Like I am very on top of like new episodes, The Boys, House of the Dragon. But if one night I miss House of the Dragon at 9 o'clock, I can't open up the app until I watch it the next day because there is immediately no warning. Here's a picture of the end of the episode. Here's someone laying dead or something. Like I don't want to know any of this. Like A, you should have a warning, and B, like you were saying, even if it's something small, anything that you're not exposed to, like so many people sell movies with a spoiler nowadays. I feel like they'll be like, oh, here's the premise, but there's a big twist. I'm like, I don't even want to know that half the time because then that like sets me up with expectations. Like like I was saying with the trailers, I don't really like to watch them. I like to go in basically with no knowledge. I'm like, oh, there's an actor I like, I'm watching this movie. There's a director I like, I'm watching. I don't want to know things. And yeah, with these movies, these comic book movies, and all these outlets, it's just insane. Like even this morning, I avoided almost all spoilers besides the big X-23s or X-20 3s in the movie. That was the only thing I saw, and that was in the trailer. I was like, good, I made it all the way. Right before the movie today, I opened up Twitter and I saw 2 words, Jennifer Gardner, close the app. I was like, that's it. And it's from Discussing Film, I'm pretty sure is what it was from. Like one of the biggest, official news accounts. I'm like, what even is this? Like, I shouldn't have even opened it. It was just a gut reaction to open the app, and then it's just boom. The first 2 words I see, I close. And I'm sure the rest of the tweet spoiled every other cameo in the movie too, without anything. It's like it officially comes out Friday night. I know they're always out Thursday night, but there's so many people that haven't even seen it or won't see it until Saturday, Sunday. To already put that out there is just insane.
It's selfish, and like I felt guilt. Literally before we went on here, I made a video because I wanted to talk about one Easter egg from the movie, and I literally still felt guilty posting it. I put 15 seconds before I put spoiler alert on the screen. I put spoiler alert in the description. I said it. I was like, scroll away. I gave 15 seconds. Like, I figured like that's good, but I still in the back of my mind was like, what if one person just like doesn't scroll away? And I still felt guilty, but I wanted to talk about Henry Cavill did the fucking bicep cock from Mission Impossible Fallout, and that was so fucking funny to me. That was like my favorite Easter egg in the movie, and it wasn't even like related to Marvel, but that's what I wanted to talk about. But I still in the back of my mind like felt weird, even with a warning. I don't know, just like, but some people just don't care. I don't get it.
Well, people will not swipe no matter how much of a warning. I've had people literally be like, dude, why'd you spoil this? I'm like, okay, it says on screen spoilers. I said the word spoilers like 3 times.
Yeah.
And it's like, so sometimes you can do your best, and there's always going to be that one person that just like watches it anyways and then still gets mad. Then I still feel bad for them. I'm like, I gave them the warning. I feel bad that I spoiled it.
Yeah, me and like Dan said, me and him before you jumped on, we're both talking about the fact that both of us today both released videos about spoiler things about the movie. And it was interesting when I was editing my video at the very end of it, it's all about Wesley Snipes. And I show a picture of like they announced all the cameo actors at San Diego Comic-Con, and there's like all of them hugging, and I showed that because that further emphasized the point that I was making, the story that I was talking about. And it was funny when I was editing it, I was like, oh shit, like should I block all these people that are in here like with Wesley? But then I was like, if people watch this far through, because this is the end, I was like, if people watch this far through the video, then they've watched the movie. So I don't think I have to block out these other people.
Yeah, I mean, I think all we have to do is just be as courteous as possible to people and just respect people. Like, it's there will be plenty more videos to make, but people only get so many experiences to see a fucking movie that they're excited for. A lot of people, people don't have fucking money right now. Like, a lot of people go to one movie in half a year. This might be that moment. So just like, I don't know. It bothers me. But I wanted to mention, you said Daniel Radcliffe Stone. I would have loved, he would have been a sick Wolverine at any point. I didn't realize he is 5'5", which is crazy. And he also just got, I don't know if he did a steroids. Like, he looks fucking insane. He got so jacked for no reason. And literally for no reason. Like, they asked him, he was just like, I just wanted to be ripped. So he looks wild, and he looks exactly like Wolverine, but we didn't get it. But I that would have been great.
I thought he was going to be the, short Wolverine.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah. I thought he was going to turn around and that was going to be Daniel.
Because I knew how small short he was.
I never knew that, which is wild, but yeah.
They were
you and him are the same size, Dan.
Yes. I'm actually 5'3.5".
I was gonna say, Joel, I was curious. I'm glad you brought it up, because I was really curious, because I knew you were watching the film today, and all of us watched it yesterday. Even though it was really annoying to you to see Jennifer Garner, I'm super happy that was the only one that you saw. Out of them all, I gotta ask. I mean, it's so funny because we could go into the narrative and talk about the entire story and okay, what's happening to Deadpool, what's happening to Wolverine, blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, the thing that everyone's gonna talk about is the fucking cameos. So, what was your favorite?
Well, before I say that, I just want to say that's I think why I wasn't bothered by the lack of story, is because the first two Deadpool movies are not movies. They are just Deadpool doing something stupid. Like, I was watching that first Deadpool movie, I gave it 4 stars on a rewatch, which I think is higher than I ever gave it before. I was like, I had a blast with this. It's not a movie. Half of it's him on a highway, then his girlfriend gets captured. I'm going to save my girlfriend. That's all that happens in that movie, and it's like an hour and 40 minutes. So I kind of knew it wasn't going to be, anything at all. But obviously, I think Chris Evans coming back as Johnny was the funniest cameo. That just really worked for me. It was so obvious when he first came up on screen, the flame on. I don't know. It was working for me. It's stupid. Those movies are stupid, but that's what made me love it so much. It's just incredibly just, they know how bad those movies are. He knows how bad that role is, and that Captain America saved his life pretty much. And now even after that, it feels like he hasn't done anything really, Knives Out maybe. But just seeing him go back to one of those roles was just so funny to me.
I'm dumb as shit, man. I don't know why, but I was all Deadpool on it. And I was like, oh, he's just playing Captain America. I'm so stupid. But
I think my entire theater did that. Everybody was in shock, and I was like, okay, it was obvious to me he was gonna say flame on, but either way, the moment hit for me. It was just pure stupidity, but funny.
I talked about in my video that I released today, I talked about it, but out of everyone, Wesley Snipes freaked everyone out. That was the biggest crowd reaction that I had in the movie. And I talked about it because there was this rumors about him and Ryan Reynolds not liking each other on the set of Blade Trinity. So it even came out, I saw an article a couple months ago that there was a rumor that Wesley Snipes was going to be in this, and everyone's like, no fucking way. Not a chance. I was talking to, he doesn't act that much anymore. As far as I know. And the fact that they do have those rumors about them, but then you do the research, and it's everyone around the production said that they have issues with one another, but they never said that. Ryan said, hey, he was really into method acting, and I think it was more Blade that was angry with me rather than Wesley. He never stopped method acting ever. So, which is, extreme, whatever. And then Ryan just gave, this is back in 2004, I believe. He just gave the utmost respect. It was like, hey, if that's what it takes to get the performance, then hey, do it, man. So then everyone just thought they hated each other, but turns out they're friends.
Man, how excited were you when Channing Tatum came on screen?
Very, very. That was so fucking sick. That was the hardest I laughed in the movie was just everything he was doing. Channing Tatum is so fucking funny in general. And the accent.
So
really got me.
He was the funniest part of the movie to me.
Yeah, and I liked what they did with Gambit. I liked his style. I liked his visual aesthetic. I liked his fighting style. I thought it was cool. It sucks that it took this long to make that happen, but it's a nice moment for the fans, and it's a nice moment for him because he's been really passionate about playing that character. So it's cool to see passion like that get rewarded.
So, Joel, I don't know if you've listened to our previous episodes, but last week we did a top 5 cameos we would like to see in this movie, and that was like Dan's number 2.
Dan got like 3 out of 5, I think.
Yeah.
What was your number 1 cameo that you wanted though?
I think that was probably, in terms of what I wanted to see the most, that was what I wanted. The first one I said was Chris Evans. I said fucking Chris Pine, but I meant Chris Evans. His Human Torch. The one I really wanted, to answer your question, was Alan Cummings' Nightcrawler. That would have been fucking sweet, because he was just such a cool character, and he really elevated that movie. But I was happy with what we got. I think it's so meta, right? Like, the whole movie is so meta. I thought, given all the problems they've had with Blade and getting that movie made, having another Blade was fucking funny. And the moment where there was a reference to it, and Brian just turns and just fucking stares at the camera, and I was dying. I don't remember what they said, but about that movie getting made. I just, I like that.
They said there's 5 Punisher films, and then Wesley Snipes goes, "But there's only one Blade," and then Deadpool is just like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, good cameos. The scene of them all being introduced was a little cringe to me, can't lie. All walking in slow motion, but it is what it is.
Well, that's one of those, like, Spider-Man No Way Home had the same thing, I feel like, which I made a video like 3 months ago where I was like, here's what I want and don't want in the movie. And now it's getting pushed to everybody now later. It's got like 300,000 views in the last week, even though I made it in May.
Damn.
Because like almost all of it was like kind of accurate. But the one thing I said I do not want, it was my number one thing, is I said, I know there's going to be a million cameos. Do not do hold for applause cameos. Like when Andrew Garfield shows up and everybody, the movie stops dead and it's unbearable on rewatch because it's literally stopped for everybody to clap. And that's what that scene is. Everybody's walking out in super slow motion with the music. And it's like 2 minutes of the movie of them walking out slowly, and then another minute for X-23 to walk out after they're all introduced. It takes so long,
and everyone knew that she was going to be in it anyways.
yeah, that's the last one they reveal out of those, of course, in the movie, and they showed it. Like, that would have just been such a cool moment to see in the movie. And she could have gone back like to the premiere thing. She could have just shown up to the premiere and people would have been like, oh yeah, she was in Logan, this makes sense. Like, Anya Taylor-Joy showed up to the Dune Part 2 carpet and nobody knew she was in that movie until that moment. And then obviously everybody figured it out. But I feel like this wouldn't have even been that obvious because there was already that connection. It's like you could have just had her show up. But I don't know.
I think we were talking about that. Like, if you wanted to show an emotional core, right? That was the other reason why she was in the trailer. There's those scenes of Logan, like, I don't know if they're graves, but walking next to those big stones and the lighting looks all different. You can tell that's not a fun scene. There's something emotional there. So I still don't think it was warranted, but that's a really good example of why it just wasn't needed at all. She's there because she was in Logan.
Yeah, I think I only hit one of my 5 cameos last week.
Which one?
Human Torch.
Yeah.
But to be fair, I feel like I had the most outlandish picks.
I think that would have been really fucking seeing Martin Scorsese in it, getting shot by Deadpool would have been great. Seeing Jeremy Renner in a wheelchair, like Hawk, that would have been really funny after his accident. But maybe Deadpool board.
Spider-Man.
I almost feel like I liked the cameos they went with. I feel like for a movie with that's this fucking ridiculous and with this little plot and anything, just like I almost wanted more, just put cram shit in there, give me like preposterous cameo. I don't know.
I kind of felt the same as that.
Go ahead.
Like, I was just thinking, like, I kind of said in my review for it, I was like, the first half is so just insane with here's every cameo, everything in the world, a million Logans, every character you can imagine. And not like I wanted the second half, but then they just have the second half be like, okay, 38 Deadpools are showing up now. I was kind of in the same camp where I was like, I didn't go into it really expecting, like, if there was like 2 cameos, I wouldn't have been disappointed. But like I said, it got so insane so early on. I wish they did just keep going. And then I was kind of like, okay, I was just waiting for that next just crazy, stupid reveal. And that kind of never happened.
Yeah, I think the movie really, really, really slows down as it goes. I think it starts out fun. Like, once they get out of the void, I was just kind of like, all right, we just got a generic fucking villain whose name I can't remember.
Both
Try and
villains
end
are
the
really
universe with the
forgettable.
MacGuffin machine, and it's just like, all right, bro, like, I don't know. I just checked out a little bit. I feel like it really slowed down. Did you guys feel that way at all?
Yeah. Did you like Emma Corrin though?
I think she's a good actor,
I think she did phenomenal in this role.
but like, there's not much to do. Like, she's just like, I thought it was a good performance. But I'm just, and Joel, you kind of mentioned this earlier with like, it's like the sky beam effect, right? Like every fucking movie has to have the sky beam, and the multiverse is collapsing, and the universe is going to, like, it's just like, I've seen this shit before, and like, I think the problem with the Infinity Saga is it's almost like a high that Marvel is chasing. Like they've already done this huge moment that was like it was like a cultural moment too that was so big, and now it's like, well, how do we outdo that? Like, how do we a just recreate it, but how do we push past that? And it's like, maybe you don't have to. Maybe just go smaller, tell more personal stories, and like patiently spend another 10 years building that, because you didn't get there with the wave of a wand. You got there by putting together all these well done movies, and then a narrative kind of formed over time. So I check out when I'm just like, nothing interesting or exciting is going to happen in terms of the actual story and like what's next. Like, what is the next? I understand this was fun, but like, is the future any better, or are we just where we were last year? I don't know.
Oh, I was worried about, kind of off topic, but tied in with what you're saying. Like there was all those reports about like the next Spider-Man film, Spider-Man 4. Kevin Feige and Marvel wanted to be like this more street level, smaller, personal story, and then Sony, being the geniuses they are over there, the studio behind great Madam Web and all that stuff, they come in and they're like, oh, we want it to be a No Way Home level event. We want, Tom Hardy's Venom and this Venom and this other like Sinister Six in the first movie and multiversal events and Andrew Garfield back. And it's like, Sony has no clue, and now Marvel doesn't really either, but they have no clue what makes the big events. Like you were saying, you need to have the singular stories and then they collide. Like that's why the DCEU was so bad. It's like, okay, here's Superman. Now we're in the Justice League already. You haven't even met half of these people. And now here's Batman and Superman, and whatever order those came out, I don't care. I've watched those movies all like once in my life, and I'm never going back to a DCEU film ever again. Like I like Aquaman, I like Zack Snyder's Justice League, but it's not worth the 4 hours again.
I'll never forget that. They really. Sorry, Stan, go ahead.
No, it's good. It feels like James Gunn's kind of like pacing everything really well. It's like, I don't think the Justice League movie comes out for a few films. I know that.
Yeah, I mean, it's all it's all in the framework, right? Like you just have to have a patient mindset when you're laying out like the blueprint for what you're going to do. Like I think, like you just said, DC or Warner Brothers was just like, wow, we're so far behind. Let's create what they just did in 20 years in 2 years. Sure, why not? Everyone will like it. But like, it was so crazy to see. That first Justice League movie was so bizarre to watch. Because they just tried to like shoehorn you into these amazing in my opinion, DC like demolishes Marvel character-wise. And they just kind of like tossed them at us and just expected people to buy it, and it was so odd. But I'm excited for the future with Gunn.
One thing I would love to see when it comes to Deadpool and Wolverine is I wonder how many people they reached out to be in this film that said no. Like, what was their plan? Like, was Elektra, Gambit, Wesley Snipes' Blade, was that all the plan? Like, they worked out exactly like they wanted to. And something I found so bizarre about the movie was at the very end, they're like, hey, we left some people back there, let's really be a family. They only get Daphne Keane. And I was like, that sticks out to me, where it's like you couldn't get the other actors there for that moment. It kind of reminds me, I think, Joel, you mentioned it, about No Way Home, where the Lizard and Sandman kind of weren't the actors. They were just CGI the entire time. It's like, oh, you couldn't get the people for when you wanted them.
Well, with that Daphne Keane scene, I was wondering if I missed something, did they explain, or was there a scene of her getting out of the void? Because when she showed up, I
No.
literally looked at my one friend. I was like, "Wait, how is she there?" Like everybody, I thought just got devoured. But oh, never mind, she's actually here. I was like, "Did we get a scene cut? Like that's just in a studio somewhere in the editing room? Like that just made no sense to me." I was like, "This isn't a movie you're looking for sense in." But I just needed 1 millisecond of her jumping through the portal or anything. So she was
Yeah,
just
and then
there.
like what happened to the rest of them? Like you said, so like did they just not bring the rest of them through because reasons? Like I don't know. It
Like I
feels
said,
like a
it's
movie
very
that
obvious.
it's not a short movie, and it doesn't. Yeah, to me, it felt like it dragged a little bit, but at the same time, it's like I wanted more, but also less. Like I feel like there's a lot of shit they could have cut out and then added in just some other scenes that would have just tied the story together a little better and made it flow better. But yeah, it's a lot of time just kind of hanging out. I don't know if this is a bad comp. I was thinking about talking about, and this might sound weird. This reminds me a lot of the Marvels, where it's just, and hear me out, but just get the characters together and then just hang out and listen to them talk. And there's no real story. There's no villain. It's just, to be with those characters, and that's okay. But like, it doesn't do much for me. And like, people might like these characters better than the characters in the Marvels, but like at the end of the day, it's kind of the same thing for a different audience. No, like, I don't know.
Say, I
Just
have a
executed
question.
better.
I have a big question for you guys because I'm dumb as shit. What exactly is the whole conundrum with Deadpool's world? It's like Logan died, and because Logan died, the timeline, he's like the savior of Deadpool's timeline, so it's all fucked up and it's gonna go away. And he needs to revive Logan to fix his timeline.
I didn't understand that because was Logan in the future of that timeline, or we're saying Logan was happening simultaneously?
I felt like it was a weird thing where the movie, I thought it was doing one thing where it was just like, oh, these timelines are just getting deleted as their way of being like, okay, we're Disney, we consume everything. Fox, we're deleting you from existence. I thought that's what they were doing, and then they pulled out the anchor. And I watched both seasons of Loki. I don't remember anything about an anchor person in the universe. Maybe I'm just misremembering. I'm like, we had 2 seasons of the TVA, and I swear I don't remember that whatsoever. So I have no idea. That's another thing, like we were talking about earlier with Logan, where were they going? It's another thing. It's like, just kind of don't focus on that detail is what they want you to do, and just like forget that. But it is kind of like that is the driving point. I feel like it would have been better as a personal thing of like, I don't know, for some reason Nova had a history with Deadpool, which would have made no sense. But you get a villain maybe that does have a history, and then she's just trying to destroy either his timeline or make sure he can't get back or something that's just like that. I think it would have been a lot better than just ominous. Again, every timeline's deleted for some reason.
Like you were saying with the first 2 Deadpool movies, like they're not supposed to be taken that seriously. Honestly, my issue with this movie was I rewatched the first Deadpools. It's been a long time since I've watched them, but I watched all 3 movies back to back. And I found myself really enjoying whatever serious moments there were. I really liked those. Like when it came to the first movie is Vanessa and him, and like him being a shitty partner and him being better. And then he becomes like a father figure to Russell in the second movie. And just I like how in those 2 movies there's like the characters carry over. Like when it comes to Colossus, Negasonic, like all those people, even the cab driver. Like I really like those people a whole lot. And I hate how they're just it is the question as is this a Deadpool movie? Is it a not it's not a Wolverine movie, but there's not a lot of focus on them. They're there at the beginning and then you really never see them for the entire film. And there's this whole plot line where their world's gonna get destroyed, blah blah blah. But I don't think it makes sense for the character of Deadpool after the aftermath of Deadpool 2 to go into this emotional fit where he's so sad about not getting into the Avengers. Like, why the fuck does Deadpool care about getting into the Avengers? And then that causes his relationship with Vanessa, who he's been fighting for 2 movies, just to go to shit. It's like he didn't care about being in the X. Like all of his team died with X Force in the second movie. Like he wasn't fixated on being part of a team. So I thought that was just a weird shoehorn into the MCU itself. Like, oh, we want us to be a part of the Avengers, and here's not Happy Hogan, and all this stuff. And I was like, that just doesn't fit. And it's funny because I said, and that's what I meant, and especially everything with the multiverse. I said, I feel like they still MCU-ified Deadpool when it comes to the Avengers plot line and also the multiverse, which you had to do that anyways because of all the cameos, right? But someone's like, no, sir, they had gore and they had cursing. And I was like, okay, there's more than just that. There's more to a story when it comes to Deadpool than just those two things. But that's what I was really disappointed by. I just feel like that didn't make sense for the character for him to be upset about that.
Well, I also feel like it's a weird. Well, I guess I'll defend that a little bit. I think it's kind of the opposite. It's like everything somehow went terrible with Vanessa that we don't really see, but that's, I guess he thinks joining the Avengers will fix that. Why? I don't really know. But it also seems like they could have explained that if they wanted to, but then for Wolverine's like story. But then at the end, it's like, oh, both of them have their big moments saving the day. But we really only focused on Wolverine's more serious, darker side. And it seems like they couldn't really pick. And again, it's not really a thing that really like lowered the movie for me because I honestly, coming into this, I don't care about like I would have liked to see more of Vanessa because it would have made it feel like Deadpool 3. But I feel like, which is kind of stupid also, I think Ryan Reynolds or someone came out and said like, oh, this isn't Deadpool 3. This is Deadpool and Wolverine, which I think is fine on its own. But I kind of hate how that's the problem with the MCU now, in my opinion, is that like you can't just watch Deadpool, Deadpool 2, and Deadpool and Wolverine. You have to have watched Logan, which, yes, you should anyways, but you have to have watched, you can make it without watching the Fantastic Four and stuff, but you can't just watch these movies and get the full experience. And like, even Guardians 3 had the same problem. You can't watch Guardians 1, 2, 3. You have to watch Guardians 1, 2, Infinity War, Endgame, maybe Thor Love and Thunder, then Guardians 3 to get to the point. And it's like, we're not even having succinct trilogies anymore, and it's not like a minor thing where it's like you can just gloss over. It's like huge things that happen to these characters that now you can't just watch 3 movies in a row. You have to watch 8 movies in order to understand a trilogy, which like for me that it's going to watch them all anyways isn't a problem, but it is a big problem. And then they wonder why like the box offices are lower. Like obviously that's not true for this movie, but for a lot of the MCU I feel like that is the problem. It's like, okay, everybody doesn't have time to watch 70 hours of TV shows and 5 extra movies to get the sequel to Doctor Strange. Like, but that's what you have to do now.
And they've realized that too. Like, I watched Loki season 1. I didn't watch Loki season 2. But you mentioned it earlier, the show, and I was like, I feel bad for anybody who has not watched that. With everything involving the TVA, I can only imagine how lost they are. But I applauded them tremendously because they realized that was such a problem. And now they're, I believe, not at all incorporating TV shows into the movies anymore because they have Marvel Television, Marvel Animation, and Marvel Studios now, I believe. So I think they've done away with that, but they've set up certain stuff like Captain America, the Brave New World and the New World Order, something like that. That's a lot of Disney Plus shit in there. So I'm really curious how that does because in a sense, the Marvels, I believe, was their lowest maybe grossing movie ever. That's a lot of Disney Plus in there. So I think that was such a smart decision, but you're absolutely right. I can only imagine how lost people were if they didn't watch Loki.
Yep. I didn't watch any of Loki.
And I think we talked about earlier, like being able to watch something like Logan and just like being able to appreciate it no matter who you are or what stage of life or what you've seen before. It's just a good movie. And just, I think when we were talking about earlier Marvel movies just like being better standalone movies, it also makes them so like you can enjoy them on an island, like just by themselves. We don't need like to do a lot of homework and do all this other shit and know all this other information. And I think it is probably maybe a little frustrating to someone like just walking in off the street that hasn't kept up with the TV shows. Maybe they're older, maybe they're just busy. They might sit down and just be like, that was okay, but like I don't really know what was happening or what this means. So it's definitely a struggle as you expand the universe, like keeping it together coherently. But it still is a fun ride. I'm just, like I said, still curious about the future. And
I was going to say that's insane because if for somebody who's lost, a lot of people thought that this was going to clear up a lot of stuff. Like, oh, Deadpool, you can go to different universes, cut this out, cut that out. no idea what's happening in the overall MCU. This basically is just its own little story, which is nice, but I think people just have this mindset now, like, okay, how is this going to translate into Captain America, the New World Order? That's the name of it, right?
I think it's Brave
Yeah.
New World. Or did they change it again to?
It's Brave New World.
Oh, I also
New
thought it
World
was
Order.
But a lot of people thought this was going to clear up like a lot of stuff, and it's kind of just like, it's kind of whatever still. I mean, which I guess is fitting, maybe for the Deadpool meta jokes. You know what's insane? Someone mentioned this, I can't remember who, but that they made jokes at the beginning, like, oh, this multiverse stuff is really shit. Like, they've done this too much. And then the whole narrative is the exact same thing. So I thought that was really, I don't know if that was the joke, but they make the mark at, or the comment how this multiverse stuff's really not working out for Marvel, and then they just do the same shit.
Stone, refresh my memory because you watched Deadpool 2 before this. But wasn't it a big thing in Deadpool 2 that oh, what's the antagonist's name in
Cable.
that? Cable wasn't like the big thing that he only had like one more like rotation to get back home.
Yeah, but then Kyoko, I think, and Negasonic, they like just tap his little button thing, like his little device. They're like, nah, we fixed it. You can use it as much as you want. I feel like that's why a lot of people didn't like that movie, because Vanessa dies, and then during the end credits, he saves her. It's like, okay, what's the fucking point? But okay. But yeah, that's what happens, which is really, it's really dumb. But I guess that fits the ending of this, how nothing really matters. But yeah,
Because I
there's like,
forgot that.
yeah, actually, we tweaked it, and you can have as much juice as you want, which is why the TBA tracks him down. That does carry over from this movie.
That's where I was getting to. Is like
Yeah.
I thought he only had the one train, but all right. I think the best part of Deadpool and Wolverine, honestly, is the credits, which is a wild thing to say.
Good.
Yeah, it was nice. I mean, I grew up on all those movies, like, so it was cool kind of seeing them all, in bits and pieces. It was nice. It was a nice extra touch, but like, what, I could watch that outside of this movie and it would be fine. You know what I mean?
Not with that music and the montage and make you feeling like that.
That's true.
I really liked how, as much as this movie just leaves things way too open, like I did not like how they kept this Wolverine just walking around in this universe. Like I did not like that at all, and I would have liked it definitely better if it was like Deadpool made it out, every old universe is dead. But I guess it's not a thing that we're gonna do. But I did like how the post-credit scene was at least just a funny gag from earlier in the movie. It wasn't, here's Deadpool next time, here's him talking to Doctor Strange, here's Logan in Avengers Tower. It wasn't any of that, which I feel like there's so many post-credit scenes that just don't go anywhere now. So like just stop teasing stuff unless you know what's happening and just give us these things that are just like one funny post-credit scene. Because like the Eternals post-credit scene with Harry Styles, I will bet $100 we're never going to see that in the MCU. Like him, it's never going to happen. And that's happened so much lately where it's like they're just throwing out a million things. Who knows if we're even going to see like Kit Harington as Black Knight or whatever too. I think that was another one. Like I'd rather them just stop doing these like teasers and just do another thing that's just like, here's a funny gag, end of story.
I agree.
Yeah, I feel like they almost do that and then see what sticks or see what the fan reaction is. Then they're like, "Oh, nice, we'll go after that in the future." But like, I don't know. It used to be like meaningful and just be a solid like signifier of the future, and that was exciting. But now it's just like kind of lost its flair. I don't know. What did you guys think about the jokes in this? Like I thought some stuff was funny. It's a lot of like just dick jokes and like ass jokes, and I'm just like I can laugh at don't like, but like the 30th one, I'm just like, man, got anything else? Like I don't know, like, and also just some recurring gags like the dog. I was just like, okay, the dog is gross. Like okay, like they went back to it so many times, and
the stuff that made me laugh harder than like most of like the jokes are supposed to make you laugh was like the scene where you like kind of get the overtop shot of them after they fought in the van and like Deadpool's wrapped in the seatbelt. Like stuff like that was making me laugh harder than some of the jokes.
Yeah. On my rewatches, like that, I think I told Dan that, but I laugh the most at stuff that's not the sexual jokes. I really do. Big plus biggest plus of Deadpool and Wolverine, if anybody's listening, and there's no TJ Miller in this, because he's the worst part of the other two movies, because that is all he is. That is the only reason he is there. He is so annoying. So
I
really
love
glad that
TJ
he's
Miller in
there.
the first one. I'm going to disagree with you on that.
That's what brings down like Deadpool to Deadpool 2 is there's a lot of the same gags.
Yeah.
I think Deadpool is very much better than Deadpool 2. I don't know about comparing Deadpool Wolverine to Deadpool 2 because this does have Hugh Jackman, but even like there's the same scene of Deadpool reaching behind himself and he's like, camp counselor this, or he's like, dad, like it just I hate it. They did it one time at the end of this film. Like it stuck out of me like a sore thumb. But they do like this ad-libbing jokes about like sexual things. It's like in the first film when he goes, you look like another avocado, fucked another avocado. They do that. TJ Miller, that's his thing in the first two films. And they kind of I can't remember exactly what the context of the joke was, but Deadpool dives into that just a little bit at the end of this movie. And I hate that. I hate like this is a moment of the film where we're just gonna rip off jokes.
Wasn't it the dog at the end when he's describing it to
Yes,
blind
that's it.
roommate?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, that definitely dived back into like I don't know. That's the I get like Deadpool's humor, the Ryan Reynolds humor that it now is like that's the problem with Deadpool 1 and 2, like you were just saying, is it's a lot of the same gags. And this does suffer from that. Like they make like the same Scoutmaster joke that's in those first two movies. That's in here once. But I don't know. For some reason, I think like I said this in my video, but having Hugh Jackman just being uber serious there kind of balanced that out a little bit for me. And just how meta it goes. Because I always felt like it was a weird line where it's like, okay, Deadpool, it's always meta and breaking the fourth wall, but it was kind of this weird level. I love how they just went fully into it and just played into how stupid this is, how stupid the multiverse is. I can easily see someone watching that and say like, this is a 1 out of 10 movie, worst thing I've ever seen. Them making fun of it doesn't make it better, but I don't know, for me, just them going full into the meta rather than like Deadpool 2 was not funny at all to me because I just feel like there's just so many, like you said, it's a repeated humor. We're adding in other characters that are just I don't like a lot of the side characters in Deadpool 2. I at least feel like we said, Gambit was really funny. Johnny Storm, I laughed at his like flame on and falling down. Like I feel like at least the cameos and characters on the side were at least funny in this, even though Ryan Reynolds' humor definitely does get tiring. But I do kind of still like him as Deadpool. It's just when he's Deadpool in some random $100 million Netflix movie that I can't stand. Like I was gonna do a Ryan Reynolds ranking, and I was trying to get through his filmography, and I could not do it. I quit because it was just I watched like Hitman's Wife Bodyguard or something, the first one, and that was the line for me. I was like, I'm not doing. There's like 10 more of these Ryan Reynolds movies I've never seen. I'm not doing it. It was just, but him as this character, some reason the humor doesn't bother me, even when it is like the most like 16-year-old humor ever. Like obviously that's like the thing people say Deadpool's like every 16-year-old's favorite movie, even though they can't go see it in theaters. And that still is true with this for sure. But I don't know, for some reason when he's this character, I don't mind it. But him doing this in like his Mint Mobile commercials, that's when I'm like, okay, save it for your Deadpool and not everywhere else, because then that's when it gets tiring.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting having Hugh Jackman like as just a straight man. Like it did add another like a contrast to it that made it, I guess, a little different. Do you guys think this is the most like melded like an actor has ever been to a character in history? Like in terms of them pretty much just being interchangeable. Like I was trying to think about if there's another better example of that, but I don't know that there is. In terms of, I don't know. What do you guys think?
You're saying Ryan with Deadpool, right?
Yeah.
Because like I said, they're both in different ways. Like Hugh outside of this role is different, but he's just so associated with Wolverine since he's been doing it.
Oh no, yeah. I mean Reynolds. I mean Reynolds and Deadpool. Like I
definitely feel like Robert Downey Jr. is kind of that. Like he has more better stuff outside of Iron Man. I feel like that's like everybody could agree on that. But I feel like him being that character for so long, and like even his Oscar acceptance speech, it's like, oh, when he was doing Tony Stark, he was just doing him. And that's another person that's kind of like one and the same. Johnny Depp is another one I can think of as Jack Sparrow. Like, again, he has way better stuff outside of that, which Ryan really doesn't have, which I think is what makes Ryan Reynolds so like synonymous with Deadpool. it's like there's not another iconic Ryan Reynolds role where those other two actors do have that, but I definitely think those are close, where they're like pretty close to their characters in a lot of things, or at least like can come off as that.
Yeah, and it's so interesting with RDJ because I mean it's a long conversation to get into, but just where he was in his life when he got that opportunity and his problems with alcohol and like all that stuff, and how much of that resonated with Tony Stark and like with like they were eerily similar, and it really was strange. It was a perfect casting, but it's almost like as he was kind of like recovering and getting his life back, like Tony was, his arc was improving and he was changing. It's very, very interesting, and he really did kind of, I think that is a really good choice, but he also has the ability to, you know, go into Oppenheimer and become Strauss, and he's just gone. Like he's just this old evil guy that you can't recognize, which I don't think Ryan Reynolds could ever do, but that is a great pick.
I do think Ryan, he can't do that, but I feel like he could do other stuff that's like actually challenging, and people are like, oh wow, this is something Ryan Reynolds could do. But when he's printing off, I don't even want to know how much money he made for this, probably like, 20, 30, 40, 50 million for this, and he can do the same character and everything and just get blank checks, and he owns like whatever he does, Mint Mobile and the soccer team, like I said, and he owns a million things. Like he just became way too successful off of this one thing that he really, I don't think he's the actor that's going to go out and try to do that just because, and it's not like he has to. So it's kind of disappointing because I feel like he likes it, not to the level that Robert Downey Jr. did in Oppenheimer, but I feel like he could do something that's like, oh, this isn't just him playing himself, but I don't think we'll ever see it.
Yeah, and two of his more serious roles that I always think about that I'm like, he really was acting are, first of all, Buried, which I think is a really fucking good movie, and it's very, I mean, it's so dark, no pun intended, like it's really heavy, and there's no like levity in that performance. It's really just like desperation and like connecting with the audience in a way that just, in his like funny stuff he's not doing. And also Smoking Aces, which I think is a fucking really underrated movie. Have you guys seen that?
I have not.
It's like a crazy shoot 'em up action movie from like the mid 2000s, I want to say. It's like 2006. It's like kind of a cult classic, like crazy shoot 'em up movie. Ray Liotta's in it, Ben Affleck's in it, Chris Pine's in it, Andy Garcia. It didn't do well with critics, but it's really fucking cool, and he's serious in it, and it's a good, hour 45 just straight action. So you guys should both watch that. Because he can act. It just like you said, he's comfortable, and why change the formula? So
I know a lot of people throw in Mississippi Grind in there too with Ben Mendelsohn.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people like that too. It's funny, both of you guys have the same outlook when it comes to this movie, as in it was really good at the beginning and then kind of just slowly goes down in quality of the story over time. What did you guys, I mean, honestly, I think it was the best part of the movie for me. I dig the Bye Bye Bye. I really did. I thought that was really fucking funny, especially when he was dancing. I thought that was really good. And it's interesting because I had a really bad seat. I was moving, so I didn't actually know where I was going to be at when I watched this, so I didn't get a ticket until it was too late. So I was in like the second row. But I felt like I wish I was back in the whole crowd because I feel like my experience wasn't as good, especially because the lady next to me was like 50 and she was by herself and she fell asleep, but it's whatever. I felt like I was the only one digging that part. Like I was really holding back my laughter. Like I wanted to really laugh out loud, but I thought that was really effective. And I see like it's kind of been a meme a little bit in the last couple, like just today, of people just playing that song and dancing to it after they see Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah, I just saw you commented on a Brock's video like an hour ago before the thing started. But yeah, I love that scene, and I feel like this movie just kind of came out, like I said, out of the gates firing so high for me that like everything was hitting. That is why my rating is kind of like stayed at like a 4. And like I said, anything that's X-Men, I feel like I automatically give like an extra half star. Like I gave The Last Stand 3.5. Like I just give the X-Men movies that like benefit. Like, yeah, I know everybody's like, you don't even want to know my Apocalypse ratings. It's maybe the same, and everybody hates that too.
I think that movie is a tiny bit over. It's a little over like dramatized in terms of people like how bad people say it is when you compare it to the other bad like Dark Phoenix, X-Men Origins Wolverine. Like it's a little better than that, I think. And just having someone like Oscar Isaac to play with, like he was trying. It just it wasn't quite it, but it's overhated for sure, I think.
Yeah, it's overhated and overplayed. Like, is Oscar Isaac winning an Oscar in that role? No, that's not happening. But I really think like he's not terrible in that movie. There's lots of those X-Men moments in that movie from like the first and X2, like similar moments that really hit. And just I don't know, I just love these X-Men characters so much that like as long as you give me something that's kind of comprehensible with them in it, I'm gonna enjoy it to some level. This is kind of completely off topic, but I just wanted to go to the lady pool thing. I kind of love the restraint of just having it just be random lady pool. It's not Blake Lively. It's not Taylor Swift. It's not anyone. I just kind of like how they were just like, oh, it's just a person in a mask because everybody else in the movie is like someone. And then that came out in the one trailer again that I didn't want to know. And then everybody's making their videos. Here's who I think Lady Pool is going to be. So I was kind of glad that it's like, not that the movie has any restraint whatsoever, but that was one moment I was like, okay, they actually didn't just go for like, I don't know, seeing Taylor Swift in this movie. I have nothing like whatever, but it would have just taken me out of it. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
She was Lady Pool.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree too. Did you know who voiced her?
I could not pick it up. It sounded so familiar, but
it is Blake Lively.
yeah, I kind of figured that when it was like happening, but I was like, her not taking off the mask.
Yeah,
I like that too.
Yeah, and
They
a lot
also
of
have
like
that
the average
Gossip Girl
person
joke,
watching
really.
is not going to like necessarily pick up her voice. As we were just quickly talking about like the X-Men movies in general, what's like your top 3 like all-time X-Men movies? Just you don't have to dive into them, but out of curiosity.
I have X2 as my number 3. I don't know why. I just love that. Like the raid on X Mansion is one of my favorite scenes. I love like everything with Jean at the end. Besides the fact that all that stuff gets like undone, because I feel like the biggest sin of all the X-Men movies. It's like every great moment. It's like, okay, we're just gonna take that back. But then ironically, after saying that, I also love Days of Future Past is my 2, and then Logan, obviously the 1.
It's funny that you mentioned that because my wife's never watched. She likes Marvel movies, but she's actually never watched the X-Men movies because I feel like they're kind of different in a way. But we watched X-Men and then X2 together, and then because I was originally preparing because we were going to cover a lot more movies originally. I was going to watch X-Men: Last Stand, and I told her what happened at X-Men: Last Stand because we had watched the other 2 movies together. I was like, okay, Charles died and all this stuff, blah blah blah. And then we were watching Logan last night. She's like, hold on, how is Patrick Stewart alive? I thought you said he died in Last Stand. And I was like, he did, but it's not important. It's like this doesn't really matter. If stuff happens in these movies, it's not. She's like. Then I also told her how in First Class, I believe Mystique and Charles are like best friends, like they grew up together. She's like, but Patrick Stewart's like 30 years older than her in X-Men. I was like, never mind, I'll stop talking.
I do like First Class though. I think it's really, really, really good.
I love First Class, but my only problem with First Class is kind of my problem with like every prequel movie to ever exist. Like I guess Deadpool and Wolverine is winking at the audience in a different way, but every prequel now I feel like in First Class is so guilty of this. Is every single thing that's ever happened in an X-Men movie gets an origin story. Here's the origin of Magneto's helmet. Here's the origin of this. We're making jokes about, oh, Charles, what if you're bald one day? We're getting an origin for everyone's name, why he wears a size 7 shoe. Like, I don't need every single thing winked at, but I do really like that movie. Like, it's another, like, 4-star movie for me. It just, every prequel, I feel like, I like just seeing the characters at an earlier stage. I don't need every single thing that happens later. Like, I know he goes bald. The only one I think that really works is like the moment where he gets like paralyzed. I think that really works. But everything else, it's like, this is a little bit too much winking for me.
That's how I like watching, like, I hate fucking Solo. And that's the reason. It's just like, I don't need to know every single fucking detail about Han. Like, it's too much. Part of what makes Han cool is just like not knowing. He's just this mysterious, roguish dude that just like kind of appears and just like is a badass and morally gray, and like that's fine, but not that's way off topic. But I get what you're saying.
Han Solo's name just could have been Han Solo.
That's criminal. That's still one of the worst. Like, I think Solo's fine, but that scene is one of the most unnecessary things ever.
Yeah,
I still find
it's
it funny,
a whatever
I feel
movie. Like it's whatever, but just I didn't need it. I don't know.
Yeah, but I'm glad you like Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm curious. I said this in my review. I'm really scared that I feel like even people are negatively. I think No Way Home's a better movie, in my personal opinion. But I'm scared when it comes to. I compared it to Endgame because I feel like Endgame is. I think the general consensus. Everyone thinks that Infinity War is better than Endgame because Infinity War is a lot of buildup. There's a lot of different stakes happening and everything kind of makes sense, and you've never really seen it before. But Endgame's a lot of Easter eggs. Like you go through the Marvel movies, and there's a lot of winking here and there, and I'm just curious how much this will hit people on rewatches. Obviously, it's fresh, and even for my own personal opinion on the film, I enjoyed it. But how much am I going to enjoy it when I know that Chris Evans is coming and when I know Wesley Snipes is going to be there? Jennifer Gardner, I wanted to say, is kind of just here. She's kind of just in the movie.
I think they even joke about that. They're like, they have some throwaway line. They're like, "Oh, everybody's gonna be glad to see." Like, I don't know, like nobody cares. Pretty much, they acknowledge that, like, "Oh, nobody cares," and that was the reaction in the theater. It was just like it was literally silence when she walked in, which I kind of felt bad, but I also kind of felt the same. I was like, I don't really care. That's why I didn't mind the spoiler. I guess it's like, oh, Jennifer Gardner's back in here.
I will say, I mean, Dan, you mentioned it. I will think just because out of all the cameos, even Wesley Snipes, the most memorable one, just because of the actor, is Channing Tatum, and I think he's so funny. And I think that I will continue to laugh at him every single time that I see him because I think I texted Dan this, like he cameos a lot, and I want to speak about that because I remember he's also in Bullet Train for like a couple minutes, and I remember really loving that scene of him. But then also, obviously, my one thought goes right to this is the end when he's the gimp or whatever, and he's just like, "Hey guys, what's up?" Okay, I can't get into that. I fucking love that movie, but he makes Channing Tatum his bitch, right? That's what he says.
He's very, very funny, and he definitely stood out. It's a shame we never got to see more of him in that role, but yeah, this movie is fine. I mean, will you go back and rewatch this? Do you think, Joel, or how do you feel about it?
I don't know. The thing is, like I said, I admit when I rate these things, like it's purely almost off of vibes for movies like this in the theaters. Like I was having fun with my friends. The theater was laughing. I'm giving it the 4 because I had fun at the movie. Something like Spider-Man No Way Home. Like I saw that the first time as a huge Spider-Man fan. I was like 5 stars out of the theater. And now when I rewatch it, I'm like, every time I've rewatched it, it's like 3 times now. I'm like, the first hour of that movie is terrible. Everything with Doctor Strange is bad. The reveals of Andrew and Toby coming out of the portals, as I said, is like cringeworthy. I still think there's a lot of really good stuff in that movie in like the last hour.
Yeah.
But it definitely gets worse every time. But I don't you have to separate these almost. Like I said, you can't go into this expecting like an actual movie, which kind of sounds sad. You have to expect it to be like, this is your experience here, and it either plays for you or it doesn't. And when you watch it at home, it's gonna be worse every time for something like this, an Endgame, a No Way Home. It plays on that first viewing. It's like an event more so than like something you can actually revisit and take more away from. It's kind of like the surprises that do it rather than like, oh, I'm gonna pick up something next time. Like there's nothing really to pick up next time unless I notice finally how Daphne Keane got out of the void. But that's like the only thing.
Yeah. Let's just see that other scene appear magically. I was gonna say maybe as like a closing thought for me. I think the fucking discourse around this movie already sucks. And I want to make a video about it, but like, I feel like we're just at this place where, and we touched on this at the beginning, where if you don't like it, you're like a pretentious asshole. If you do like it, you're this glazing brain rot idiot. And it's just like, bro, like, it's so unnecessary and so, like, everything doesn't have to be so divisive. And I feel like people go at each other so hard, and it's so emotional. I don't get it. Like, it's okay to like Marvel movies and nothing else. It's okay to like hate Marvel movies and like everything else. It's okay to like both. It's okay to like some, like, it's all okay. And people get so like emotional, and I just don't get it. I think the discourse is already like fucking awful. And I feel like some people like have to make this point of like, oh, I just like serious films, and other people are just like, then people have to like attack it. It's awful. I don't know what you guys think about it, but
I was just
painful.
texting Dan this, Joel, right before this. I'm gonna say this because this person's never gonna listen to this podcast episode. But somebody commented on my review and they were like, "Oh, you didn't get the story, blah blah blah." And I was like, "No, I got the story. Like, I don't think you should just open with that. Like, that sounds kind of condescending when you say it that way. I totally understood the story. I just, didn't think that Deadpool. My big thing was I didn't think Deadpool was great in this, but I thought Wolverine was fantastic. And they're like, "Well, I'm sorry you didn't like the movie." I was like, I like the movie. Just because I have flaws with it doesn't mean I didn't like the movie. I had a fun time. I literally say, I hope everyone goes and has fun. I just, it's the, it's just so impossible for people to think that you either have to. I mean, me and Dan talk about it all the time. But you have to love something or you have to hate it. Like you can enjoy it. Like I enjoy Longlegs. I think that film is super special and really fresh when it comes to just creating an atmosphere of horror. But it doesn't have to be the best thing in the entire world. It has flaws, and it's just hard for people to get that through their mind. And I only imagine, like I said at the beginning of this episode, like I feel like you very much talk about House of the Dragon, The Boys, superhero films. Like you said, that's even how you started out. Like those fandoms, and like I said, I feel like this is a great closing thing to this podcast episode. That's why I really appreciate you, Joel. Is like I I knew when you made your video, even though there's all these fan guys who attacked me in my comments saying 10 out of 10, best movie of all time, I knew that you were going to have flaws with this. And I really appreciate that about you.
Yeah, I definitely. Well, before I pat myself on the back, just kind of circling back to your point about like you didn't get this, like that's my least favorite response to something. I always am like, you can understand something and not enjoy it, or understand something and think it's okay. And a 6 or a 7 out of 10 isn't me calling a movie terrible. It's me saying it's a good, enjoyable movie. But just because you don't give something like an 8 out of 10 is a really good score, and people are gonna, if I go check my comments, I haven't now. If I go look, people are gonna be like, "What? This is 10 out of 10, obviously amazing." Like, they're so like ratings have hit inflation terribly. I'll see these slideshows from like random accounts, and it's like rating shows I've watched or rating animes I've watched in the past, whatever. Everything's like 1 out of 10, and then they have like 20 10 out of 10s. I'm like, in my opinion, like I'm not stingy with giving out like 5 stars on Letterboxd, but if you have 90% of the things you watch as a 10 out of 10, I'm like, that kind of just lost its meaning at this point. Like, I feel like you should be able to say like, this movie is a 7 out of 10. Like Longlegs, I gave a 7 out of 10. I enjoy it, but saying 7 in people's minds is like, oh my god, you just said it's the worst thing ever, and you offended my entire bloodline, which is just kind of crazy. But I don't think it's going to get any better at any point, because that is what gets the clicks, obviously. And like, that was my biggest problem. This is a total tangent, but with The Acolyte, because I did not like The Acolyte, but I did not like it because of all the reasons, like just straight up racism and like homophobia that people have.
Yep.
But since I'm in the camp of, I didn't really like it, and I gave it like a 4 or 5 out of 10, then I get lumped in with the people that are just on the super negative extreme. And then everybody that's on the super positive extreme comes to its defense. Like there's somewhere in the middle for everything. And that's just kind of lost. So I definitely try to acknowledge the fact that I have an audience and sway it. And definitely I'd recommend, I'm not sure besides this that's on YouTube, if you have other, like if you guys are doing your videos on YouTube too, I definitely recommend putting even the same shorts on there, because like the community can be way more positive, I feel like, and like just constructive, and people are kind of open, I've noticed, whereas TikTok's just the comments. If it's not Diddy Party, if it's not just like put my fries in the bag, bro, if it's not any of that, then it's just still extreme negativity. It's just kind of insane.
You know what's the crazy fact is that every movie you watch, because it's just buzzwords, there's not really a best movie of all time and a worst movie of all time. There's always mistakes and there's always positives, I think, of every single picture. Honestly, you think you know that Madam Web is the worst movie of all time and people will throw that out there. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. I'm not saying this is the worst movie of all time, but we did a Nick Cage episode 2 weeks ago.
Oh, chill.
We watched a movie.
Chill.
We watched a movie called Between Worlds, and Joel, there is a sequence where they accidentally left a scene in the movie, like in the editing. I sent it to Dan, We talked about it in the episode. I'm like, Dan, I'm pretty sure they accidentally left this in. It's just there. It is something that doesn't make sense, and it's like for 3 seconds. And I was like, that's what more people need to see. People need to see shit like this, you know?
Yeah, even Madam Web, I think I probably have like 6 or 7 movies this year that I thought were just straight up worse than that.
Oh,
Like
easily.
at
Madam Web's
least
just boring as fuck. Madam Web's
yeah.
just nothing. It's just like, again, it's just nothing. Like, it wasn't like the worst thing of all time, but I don't know, man. And what you said about the Acolyte is so true. Like, I'm in the same boat. I actually got attacked pretty bad by a pretty big account calling me like misogynist and this and that. And it's just like, bro, please, like, don't put me in with all these fucking people. Like, it's okay to say, like, I think Kylo Ren was poorly written. I think Rey was also poorly written, and I like both the actors, and they both gave good performances and tried, but the writing was still poor, and the planning was poor from Kennedy and Rian Johnson and JJ. It's not about women or men. It's and I think this movie is also like, you can criticize the writing of Deadpool and Wolverine the same way you criticize the writing of some of the female-led MCU movies. Like, if you're like, it's not about that for normal people. There are misogynist, racist, all that shit, but like, it sucks feeling like you can't critique something without being called that. Like, and I know there's bigger problems people have in the world than that, like poor me, but it's annoying at times.
Speaking of a nuanced discussion, Joel, how we like to end our episodes is talking about good movies, and we like to recommend a film to people that they might not have seen. So I didn't warn you about this, so I don't know if there's one you can think of off the top of your head.
I'll go with 2. One is Best in Show. Pretty much just a spoof parody of dog shows. And it is absolutely just a hilarious time. It is, if you love any level of like dry humor, sarcasm, which is right up my alley. That's like my humor, very just deadpan. It's got a great cast. It's just constantly moving. It's just, you can laugh at every single scene and joke in that. It's like one of the most quoted things in my household. That, I guess I'm going to go with 3 recommendations. Also, Airplane, another one that I feel like that, speaking of just pure stupidity, I love just the gags in that movie. It is the dumbest thing you'll ever watch in your life. But if you can just appreciate that humor and realize that that's also genius, I love that movie. And third, completely switching pace, a show, one of the most popular, but I feel like a lot of people don't watch it just because it's anime. Attack on Titan, one of the greatest pieces of fiction ever created, in my opinion. And I say everybody should go in and just watch it completely blind. I think it's just one of the best stories ever crafted. So that's my 3 random recommendations.
Nice, that's awesome. I love how I like said 1 and you gave 3. That's sick.
Yeah.
Like, you're just like,
I kept thinking of stuff.
It's hard though, Dan. Whenever we do this, I try to remember, because I have like guilty pleasure movies or movies that people haven't seen. I'm trying to like remember if I've recommended this before, but I don't think I have. I know you love this movie, Dan, but the movie Sahara. Have you ever watched Sahara, Joel?
I'm not.
Sahara's a solid movie. I remember growing up, I went to a babysitter's house before I would go to school because my mom worked early in the morning, and they had 2 movies. They had Miracle and they had Sahara. And I fell in love with Sahara. And basically, it stars Penelope Cruz, Matthew McConaughey, and Steve Zahn. And Steve Zahn and Matthew McConaughey are like treasure hunters, and they somehow get roped into, they're like exploring Africa, and there's like this legend of this old World War, or is it Civil War? I think a Civil War ship that
It's like a steamboat, yeah.
It basically washed from the United States over to the Sahara Desert in this giant storm during the Civil War. So that's why Steve Zahn and Matthew McConaughey are there. They're trying to find this. And Penelope Cruz, during this time, they've met each other, I believe, at a function, but basically she is a doctor, and she's trying to find the source of a disease that is killing people in Egypt, or this area of the continent. So it's a really fun adventure film. There's a lot of practical effects to it as well, and it's just a really good time. I think Steve Zahn is a very underrated actor in general. I feel like whenever I see him, like something that popped up always when it came to, when people were always talking about Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, was that scene in War of Planet of the Apes where he's doing the motion capture work and he's just fantastic at it. I mean, I even watched the White Lotus. He's in the first season of The White Lotus, which is an excellent show on HBO, and he's just a phenomenal actor that I think doesn't get enough credit. But Matthew McConaughey, this is basically casting him in a role that I feel like he was born for, but not necessarily ever expanded on, which is the hero, like good-looking hero guy who gets the girl, saves the day, bunch of explosions behind him. Maybe I'm not thinking of a film with him that includes that, but I think this is it's just a really fun time.
I will add to my watch list, and I love going on Letterboxd and seeing that it has a 2.7 because I love those types of things where it's like everybody just follows one opinion, and then hearing someone that loves the movie, those are my favorite types of recommendations.
Yeah, it's very like just mid 2000s action. It's very like National Treasure adjacent, I feel like, which has like a fucking 3 on like Letterboxd. Like, come on, man. Like, that's so crazy. But Sahara is a lot of fun, just straight up adventure movie. I talked about it earlier, but I'm going to recommend Smoking Aces. It's just really, really heavy action. It's Joe Carnahan who directed The Gray and a bunch of other movies, like action type movies. Really, really violent. Great cast. Kevin Durand is in it too. Young Kevin Durand. He's like plays an absolute nutcase, and it's just about the mob puts out a hit on the one character, and the FBI is trying to protect him. Ryan Reynolds is an FBI agent, and all these assassins pretty much come to Vegas to kill this guy, and the FBI is trying to keep him alive. It's in a lot of it's in a hotel. Wild movie. And like I said, it kind of got panned when it came out, but people have started watching it, and most people really like it when they watch it. So it's on Stars, or you can rent it on like Prime Video or Apple TV, and it's worth the time.
And anybody who's listening who's curious about it, I was trying for a little bit to find it. I thought you were saying Smoke and Aces. It's like
Smoking Aces.
Smoking Aces. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not finding it.
Right.
Yeah. Joel, we appreciate you being on, man. This was a fun discussion. Both of these movies are just a really good time, no matter the person's personal preference. We'll see how well Deadpool and Wolverine ages, but please plug yourself one more time. Everyone, go just search out Joel. Like I said, if you're looking for fandom, I mean, we're talking about superhero movies. I think he's the best on that, but he also gives it to you real and will be honest with you, even though that fandom can be toxic. And now I'm patting you on the back again, but you
Nothing wrong with a little patting on the back. Yeah. So pretty much at Vetsmovies, VETZ movies. Don't know why I ever picked that name. Randomly picked it like 5 years ago. Kind of wish I picked something different, but that's what it is on literally every single platform. Letterboxd is what I'm going to push everyone to because I feel like I need to build a cult following in there. I'm at like 2,000 followers on there, and I want it to be like an army because every time a review gets over like 25 likes, I'm like, I've made it in life. It gets me like way more dopamine than like a million view TikTok. But that's movies and everything. Pretty much every new movie, TV show release, I'll be talking about. And if I don't talk about it, I'll have 100 comments telling me why I'm stupid for not watching it. But that's okay. Like The Bear season 3. But I'm not mad about those comments at all. So yeah, at Vets Movies and everything. And yeah, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, appreciate it. Well, everyone who's been listening to the end of the episode, thank you so much. Appreciate you listening to us talk about our favorite things in the world, movies with Logan and Deadpool and Wolverine. But until next time, please go outside, sit on a park bench, touch some grass, and we'll see you next week.